Hello and welcome to Pico's World. I'm Pico and this is Real Music, the program for music makers and music lovers. You just tuned into my Real Music program, my friends, and its current series, AI Music. AI Music, friend or foe, real or fake, danger or opportunity. Is it somehow possible for us to avoid its bad aspects and use the rest of it for our own advantage? I think the answer to that is a big yes. So let's dive right into it. Have you ever been in discussions about AI that seem like you just can't win? Definitions of AI seem to be all over the place. Some say that we can never beat it because it's smarter than us. Others that it's like all new tech and will somehow improve our lives. Others might contend that, hey, we're threatened by it, so let's just pull the plug or turn off the switch. Others that, well, it's only a machine, or even that it's almost human, let's negotiate with it, something like that. Now, I believe that all this confusion is really down to the fact that we've had hoisted upon us a very vague definition of AI for kind of self-serving purposes of those that have developed it in some cases. And today we're going to be talking about that general old definition of AI, the one that is prevalent in society at this point, and talking about an alternative to that. That is more accurate, I think, that will empower us to be able to better use it for our purposes and for the benefit of society. So in this episode, I'd like to put forward this new definition of what I think AI really is, so that this will enable us, it'll give us a definition that will enable us to discuss AI on our own terms in a way that benefits us and is based on a realistic, accurate definition of what AI really is. Okay, so let's start out by focusing on the I in AI. I think we can put the A, which stands for artificial, aside for now, because many things that used to be considered natural, like our voice, acoustic instruments, became more artificial, you could say, with the advent of the electric guitar, electric piano, electronic synthesizers, mics, for example, amplified our voices. And you could argue that that's all more artificial than it used to be. So I'll skip over artificial. When we look at the term AI, artificial intelligence, I think the key word here, the one that's been misrepresented, I think, is intelligence, the I for intelligence. The common presumption now, when we hear this AI and artificial intelligence, is that somehow the concept of intelligence is primary. It's what brought us to where we are now as humans, and it's the apex of our development. It's determined everything else. So if we're competing with a robot or something that has a better intelligence, better processing power than we do, and then we could lose this whole arms race as to see who's going to dominate human civilization. But in fact, that's backwards. The thing that's driven the development of human beings is survival of the fittest. And it's that struggle for survival that's created intelligence, shaped it, and given it its specific form. And that's likely to be the real paradigm going forward. So I think if we recognize that the struggle for survival is the real driver in the development of human kind, we can reject out of hand this false dichotomy, this notion that there's a constant contest between human and robot that says that the one with the fastest processing speed will somehow ultimately control the game of life. So what I would posit, AI music or AI media, if you will, what I'd posit what this really is is a machine-generated communication signal that if we mischaracterize it as a disembodied voice of some intelligent entity trying to communicate with us, we can't really control it. We can't manipulate it. We can't regulate it, legislate it even if you like. But if we see it for what it really is, a machine-generated communication signal, it's much easier for us to control the discussion. I think it also makes it easier for us to quickly identify and hold accountable its source, which we now understand is not some disembodied intelligent mind, but simply a human broadcaster, much as someone who broadcasts TV or radio signals. A human broadcaster, in this case for machine-generated communication signals, who has chosen to broadcast this particular audio or audio-visual signal for our consumption. So how is it that we tend to filter out some of these non-human mechanical signals? And the last episode, I took a shot at explaining that in terms of the history of human development. When we came up against other species, we tended to filter out their signals as not being important, not being authentic, and giving precedence to those from other humans. And because of that interspecies communication gap, as I referred to it, we evolved this kind of filter, an authentication filter that filtered out untrusted non-human signals in preference to our own. And I further argued that based on that concept, it followed that there was a kind of hierarchy of filtration. When we get different types of signals, we tend to prioritize them in terms of how much we trust them based on their proof of authenticity. So for example, if we hear a human singer, a human group singing, live interviews, movies with actors that we know, on a scale to say 0 to 3, that would be the highest 3, the most trusted source in the sense that we think this is human. So maybe we'll want to buy that recording, and we might do that in a mass way, like 90% of the people who hear it would think, well, okay, I might someday buy this or listen to it and really be moved by it. Second on this scale of 0 to 3, 2 might be mass market music we find on Spotify and so on. We don't really know if the source of it's human or not. But ultimately, if we find out it's not, it would get a lower ranking than the higher one that we chose based on being able to prove that it's human. So that would be a number 2. Then going on to number 1 on a scale of 0 to 3 would be things like AI movies, virtual world characters and performances that we know in advance that they're not human, but still, like characters in cartoons in the past, Bugs Bunny or take your pick, people can become attached to characters and see them somehow as being valuable enough that they want to follow them and be somehow moved by them. So I'd put that down at the 1 level of the 0 to 4 continuum. At the very bottom, we'd have things like mood music or background music that you hear in the supermarket or therapy music, something like that. All you care about is this have a soothing effect on me or not, and you don't need to have it confirmed that it has a human source. So that would be down at the 0 level of the need for knowing whether or not it's a human signal. So why do I point this out, this idea of this kind of filter that's evolved in our mind? The reason I point this out is because what we're dealing with AI is not some intelligence that's communicating with us, but it's actually an audio or visual signal that's hitting our brains. Now, true enough, it may have been developed in a very sophisticated way. It may have interactive qualities somehow. It may be highly accurate in its depictions and mimicking of human behavior and so on. But that doesn't change the fact that the end product that hits us, that we have to interpret as a signal. It's either an audio signal, a visual signal, or a combined audio-visual signal. So that's why I referred to those filters, and that'll come out later why that may be important. Okay, so how might we employ this new definition of so-called AI media to empower us or society? Okay, I think this is an easy question to answer. Let's simply try applying the old definition and the new definition of AI to a everyday situation and see which one best serves our interests and enables us to do what we want to do. Okay, starting out with the first model, our original model of what they say AI means, this kind of vague definition of AI. Picture a scene of a meeting with your friends or colleagues, and they're deciding how to create a music or a movie track. And John says, in this episode, should we use real human or AI voices? I don't know, Nicole might add something like, should the actor in this scene be a real human actor or an AI actor? And while Mary chimes in, something like, what about the music? Should we use a real jazz band or an AI-generated soundtrack? Okay, we're using the vocabulary based on the current definition of what AI is. Did you notice something about this conversation? AI media here is regarded not as some mechanically generated broadcast, but rather as a voice or an actor or a music performer. In other words, as a vaguely defined ethereal entity of some kind, a disembodied intelligent contributor that, because it is so ethereal, cannot really be pinned down and dealt with in the same way, for example, that we could deal with a broadcast signal or a broadcaster. The problem being that if this is our general conceptual framework, it's going to affect our thinking about all aspects of our ability to control or not control this phenomena, which is essentially a machine-generated broadcast that's impacting us. One could see how this vague definition or conceptualization of what AI media really is might disempower us, the creators and consumers of artistic content, while empowering the broadcaster who is sending this broadcast signal to us. Now, I'm not saying that AI is not sophisticated and really kind of an amazing thing, but there's been other instances of that I would argue are not fundamentally that different. When we had the development of radio and television, at first it was pretty simple. It became increasingly automated. Finally, it became digitized. Yet no one would ever argue that these communication broadcasts were anything more than communication broadcasts triggered by a real human broadcaster. And I'm here to propose today that these so-called AI media, whether it be music, voice, what have you, are just like the TV and radio broadcasts in the sense that they are basically mechanical broadcasts triggered by real, discoverable human broadcasters with real human agendas. But if we go with the new definition of AI, a whole new game unfolds, one in which we hold all the cards. Now imagine, if you will, a conversation very similar to that one that substitutes the terms machine-generated broadcasts for the voice, actor, and music terminology they used in the previous conversation. By using our new definition of AI music, we can still choose to go with the AI music voice actor components if we like. But now AI media can be seen and manipulated as simply another mechanical function that we control not some mystical or mythical power that is somehow destined to dominate human society. Not only that, but this new definition of AI media, if you will, shines a brighter light on the source of this communication signal, the broadcaster, the person or the company that's sending this out, putting us in a stronger position to be able to identify and negotiate with them in various ways, or even to give them credit for a job well done if we feel that's warranted. Now, if your main argument against the legitimacy of AI performers is that they sound or act non-human, this argument, I think, will ultimately fail because this is not the fundamental reason people reject machine-generated performances in favor of human ones. The main reason, I think, for our inability to bond deeply with such entities is that they are not biographically human. That is to say, a real human past cannot be verified, which signals to us that they are not, despite appearances, biologically human. Now, this seemingly subtle aversion of ours is actually quite profound because it expresses, I think, a deeply rooted biologically imperative to avoid potentially risky, intimate interactions with other species we've come into contact with over the millions of years of our evolution. If you cling to the notion that AI bots can never sound and act totally human, where will this leave you when they eventually achieve perfect mimicry of human behavior, including the voice irregularities that prove people are not machines, which they certainly will? So to wrap things up, we've seen that by understanding what AI media really is, by defining it properly, it can go from seeming to be some unchallengeable force to a more mundane, easily quantified broadcast signal, something that can be discussed, manipulated, regulated, and the broadcaster's role can also be laid bare in giving bad players no place to hide and good broadcasters a way to get credit where credit is due. So all this brings us back to the question, is this so-called AI music really art? Are the non-musicians, non-painters, and non-photographers who are broadcasting these machine-generated masterpieces really artists? Does it even really matter? Well, let's take a look at these issues in our next episode that I've entitled Musician Impostors. Musician imposters. Well, there's a question for you. I haven't really decided. I don't have a hard and fast view myself yet. I'm still thinking about these issues. So why don't you tune in and join this discussion with me? And until then, this is Pico. Have a great one.